terrorist atrocities such as we witnessed recently in Paris, in Beirut and in Sharm el-Sheikh, they are meant to terrorise. They're meant to provoke us into retaliation. ISIS carry out these murderous acts not simply to maim and kill. Their main purpose and their main capacity is in being able to divert and distort Western attempts and world attempts to bring peace to Syria. ISIS at the moment, in the absence of peace, is able to fill the vacuum and try to establish their illicit state. And I and many other people don't understand why it is that our governments are so keen to play completely into their hands. Our media, our red top and our awful right-wing media in this country, their response is to put headlines in suggesting that there is sympathy amongst the Muslim community in the UK for ISIS, to put cartoons on their pages depicting refugees as potential terrorists, or even worse, as rats. And it seems as if nobody's learning the lesson. It's as if we can't see that ISIS wants us to respond in exactly the way that we're responding. It wants us to attack. It wants war. It wants the West to present itself as the enemy of their caliphate, so that they can use that for their evil recruitment purposes. And we're on this cycle of death and destruction. ISIS and the terrorists target cities, they target civilians, they carry out their heinous acts. And as a result, Western governments respond with military action and with airstrikes. And those airstrikes, we know from history, target not just ISIS members, they also kill civilians. They cause unrest. They lead to mass movement of people. And some of those affected by those airstrikes, who have lost loved ones, and those who have seen their lives destroyed, become easy targets for being radicalised by these same extremists. And so we end up acting as recruitment sergeants for ISIS by fighting them in just a military fashion. And of course those that are radicalised then often using weapons and ammunition supplied through the West, usually through third parties, but quite often manufactured in Western countries, then use those weapons back against us by carrying out more atrocities, by carrying out more terrorist attacks, which then gets us to respond with airstrikes. It's not beyond us to say that somebody's got to break that cycle, and the real courage is the courage of those that are willing to say that military action in itself is not an answer. Of course we should do everything we can internationally through the United Nations to reduce and to bring to an end ISIS's military capacity and their ability to wreak havoc on a world population. But let's not kid ourselves. When we talk of peace talks being the only weapon that they're frightened of, we're not talking about peace talks of ISIS. You can't talk with ISIS. But this is an international situation where you've got major players like Saudi Arabia, Iran, Turkey, even Assad in Syria and the Free Syrian Army, all involved in trying to occupy space which in itself was created by the West. The country, the borders between Syria and Iraq are Western creations. And if we don't sort that mess out, if we're not prepared to get around the table with world leaders to find a solution, then we play into the hands of ISIS. So over the next few days there will be lots of talk of the need for military strikes, the need to up the ante to respond to ISIS in the way that they want us to respond. And I hope that we still have parliamentarians, I hope we still have people across the parties who will not just use emotion but will use common sense to say that military action, airstrikes are not in themselves a solution, they're part of the problem. We need to break that circle of death, and we can't do it with guns and bombs. We can't do it by turning our back on the refugees, on the victims of this war. We need to do it by trying to find accommodation and peace between countries and nations who equally will want to see the back of ISIS, but look for a peaceful solution to the problems that the West themselves have been architects of in the Middle East for decades and decades.